Thank you for calling Jarvis Financial. This is Matthew, your advisor. I have nothing better to do than answer your phone calls.
Welcome to another great episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host and co-founder, Micah Shalansky. With me, as usual, is the amazing Matthew Jarvis. But in addition to that, we have another rock star advisor joining us in this 12 by 12. All right, we'll get to those jokes in just a minute. But we had another rock star advisor, Brian Skinner, joining us today. Brian, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so we just finished up an Invictus Mastermind,
Yep.
right? And so we spent a couple days together in Tennessee. We learned some great things, had some rock star advisors to be with. And so we're super excited to kind of debrief about that and talk about things that work and things that don't work.
That's right.
Absolutely.
For those of you watching on YouTube and you're wondering why we're in a cubicle, we are in fact in the Nashville airport recording it. We found these cool little suites. So if you want to laugh, go ahead and look at the YouTube video. That's why we're crammed into this little room.
Pretty tight in here.
Light coming out of the top of my head. I don't know what's going on there. All right. So
Well, Brian, you shared with us on this mastermind the last 2 days that over roughly the last 2 years, you've roughly doubled your take-home income, which is a result of it's always a result of doubling the value that you're delivering to clients. So today we want to talk about a couple of the lessons that you learned, the things that you implemented that you think really made a contribution to that doubling.
Let's get into it.
And I'd love to start off too with, in this series, and if you guys like this series, we'd love some feedback in it. We're going to call this the Doing What Works series, right? Is our business so often what I have found is that advisors, guilty right here, tend to overcomplicate things, right? We look at someone that's successful and we're like, okay, great. Now we're going to take that. We're going to change it completely. We're going to redo absolutely everything in order to duplicate their success. And then we're shocked that when we change things that we thought were minor, that we thought were improvements, it kind of blows up. So if you are a listener and you've ever done that, i.e. every advisor out there, you need to be really paying attention to this. Brian, I'd love you to walk us through first. Where were you? You've made some massive improvements, but where were you? Paint that picture for our audience because we've all been there, right? So go back to that. Then let's talk about where you're at now. Let's talk about filling that gap. Is that going to be good?
Perfect.
So I started the industry 2009. I've always been focused on growth. I have a deep passion for the business. I love financial planning and everything about it. I always had a growth mindset. I've been good at growth. And I've been thinking about like, how do I have a really structured, systematized business? I had no idea how to get there. We were talking before in the airport lobby how this is a really lonely profession.
Yes.
Right? You don't have a ton of ability to connect with other people to find like best practices.
Yeah.
I was at a firm, COVID happened, the office closed. Even at the firm, I learned a lot from the guys that I grew up in the business with. But there's so much more out there. Like, what are the top people in the industry doing? How are they doing things? I never had a roadmap of how to get from where I was to where I wanted to be.
Yes.
And that gap seemed huge. Like, how do I close that?
It's a Grand Canyon, right? Insurmountable.
Yeah. And COVID happened. I had never done a Zoom meeting before, I was telling you guys. And COVID forced everybody on Zoom. That opened my eyes to, wow, all of these things are possible. All these practices I hear about. If two people can do it, I can do it too. So I started listening to different podcasts. Michael Kitch is having the biggest one in our industry.
Totally.
I listened to the podcast he did with each of you. I'm like, I connect with what these guys have. Like, just like you've said in the podcast before, you should try to build something or take advice from someone that has a practice that you want. Right? They've done it. They've made the mistakes. They've gone through all the ups and downs of it, and now they're at this place. And I imagine that those same mistakes are mistakes that I'd be making too. So why make those mistakes myself? Just go right to the end of this is the best way to do it. Do it this way. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not even coming up with all these practice changes I've made. Almost none of them are original ideas.
No.
I'm just taking ideas from guys like you who have done it, and this is what works. I just do it that way too.
I love it.
Now, as we go through this, one of the things, excuse me, that I want to highlight is the work that this takes.
Yeah.
Right. That can be really easy. When we say this isn't complex, sometimes people think that means, oh, well, it should be easy. No. It's very simple, but it's hard work that we have to do.
Yeah.
And so that's the really important part as we talk about this process. You put in the grind, you put in the time, right, in order to make this go through. So if we run that clock pre-COVID, right, client calls, what happens?
The call goes right to me. I answer the phone. I'm in my email every day. We're talking about phones specifically. I answered all my own phone calls for the most part until I listened to these podcasts and connecting with some of the other guys that you know in the industry. I didn't know that other advisors didn't answer their phone.
Yeah.
I didn't know that other advisors didn't manage all of their own email and be in it every single day.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that was a path. I would love to not have to answer my phone because it's not a value adding activity. right?
Mhm.
And so I didn't know how to get there, though. I had a lot of, like as you would say, head trash
Yes.
around how am I going to do this? Are people going to be really upset now when they call the office and it's not Brian that picks up the phone? The answer is no. Just like the
Yes.
doctor's office analogy, when you call the office, for Dr. White, he doesn't pick up the phone, right?
Yep.
He is the front desk person does. The doctor's in with patients usually all day,
Yes.
and maybe he doesn't get back to you for 2 days or 3 days. I don't want to take that long to get back to
No, of
someone,
course
but
not.
I don't need to be the person who picks it up either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For our listeners, right, if you are answering your phones right now, if you're an advisor answering phone, pay really close attention. Brian's going to talk about how he made this transition. If you're saying, oh, I would never answer my phones, I solved that years ago. Cool. We all still have that thing. Maybe it's checking emails, Brian, as you mentioned. Maybe it's opening the physical mail. Maybe it's thinking that you need to be at the desk a certain number of hours or work until a certain hour. We all have that thing, Micah, you and I included, where we think, oh, this is something I have to do. You don't. In fact, not only is it not helping the client experience, like answering phone, it's actually taking away. It's weakening. Like why
Yeah.
why is Brian able to answer the phone? Is he ever busy?
Brian, I'd love you to jump in and say, why is this? Let's close this dot, right?
Yes, please.
With crayons, if that's all right. Why is this not valuable to a client for you to answer the phone, one? And then let's jump into the process and how you fix it.
Yeah.
The way that I provide the most value to clients is by working in their financial plan, their strategy, meeting with them, going over like investment planning, the high level things that that the practice really does. Those things like answering the phone, scheduling, answering emails, that's not providing any value.
Mhm.
That's a gateway to get to what I can do really well.
Mhm.
So if I'm breaking my focus every 5 minutes to answer a phone call or answer an email, that's pulling me away from like
Mhm.
what I need to be really doing, which is focusing on exactly the task at hand, which is building a financial plan, meeting with a client, developing a strategy, or implementing something.
Now, I'm gonna pick that apart just a little bit, if
Please.
I may,
Yeah.
right? So, some of the head trash that comes in and says, "Okay, well, my value is doing financial plans." So, if a client calls with a financial planning question, then they have me. Now, I can answer their financial planning question.
Right.
But there's a fallacy in that, right?
Yep.
One of the big fallacies is when that client calls, you are caught off guard. You haven't
Yes.
looked at anything in advance, and you are on the verge of making a massive planning mistake. That's what you're on the verge of. You may
Yeah.
get it right, but the reality is, you're doing a client a disservice by answering that question right away and not having time to evaluate, to step back and look at it, review everything. That is my opinion,
Right.
right? What about your thoughts on that?
100%. And some of the systems that you implement and when you coach the person who's answering the phones for you is to try to get the client to tell them
Exactly.
why are they calling. And so if I knew why they were calling before I called them back, or I have a scheduled time to call them back and
Mhm.
the time that my assistant set it in the calendar, and then she puts a note in that meeting, uh, Mr. Jones wants to talk about long-term care. Perfect. Let me go back in their red tail document folder and pull up the long-term care quotes that we ran,
Yeah.
so I know exactly what they look like. I'm not going to be caught off guard, like you said, about what are they actually calling about, and then I'm just trying to scramble for an answer off the top of my head instead of
Mhm.
being prepared for it to give them a better answer. And what we're all trying to achieve, I can deliver more value on that phone call if I'm prepared for it.
I love that. Brian, tell us when you went to your assistant, to your team member, how did that discussion go? Like, take us to step one. So you hear on the Perfect Area podcast, wherever you hear, I shouldn't be answering my phones. Kind of walk us through, like, what was the next step after that?
Honestly, the next step for me was at the level I'm at with my practice, I needed a second assistant.
Sure.
My assistant now is amazing. She
Yeah.
does everything and does it
Must be.
all
Yeah.
really, really well. She's a jack of all trades, will pick up anything, learn, teach herself. But their capacity to, and honestly, it's a similar thing. Like
Hmm.
if her focus on doing ops and like plan prep and
Mhm,
everything else is
mhm.
being broken all the time by answering phone calls, emails, and doing scheduling, she won't be as good at that.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's not what she likes to do. It's not, she likes to be more behind the scenes. I wanted to have someone who complements her personality, and
Yeah.
all three of us are complementing each other's skill sets. So I hired Margot, and we hired Margot. She is now the person who does all of the, manages the kind of like the front of the house,
Yeah.
and going over with her, like, this is how these different phone calls will go. If someone asks this is what we tell them.
Perfect.
You guys were posted script actually in the backstage pass, a one-page
Yep.
PDF.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
was a really great place to start. I was looking for something like that. It was there. And I edited it to fit my practice needs. It's not
That
meant to
works.
be an end
No.
all, but
No.
it's a good starting place.
Mhm, mhm.
And just everything about the training to give to her is about how, one, I'm not available right away because I'm
Yeah.
almost never am, right? I'm either
No.
in
Yeah.
meetings or just unavailable in general. and where I can't have my focus interrupted from the call, and then getting the person's information, delivering that, Four
Mhm.
Seasons level customer service, as if like do
Yeah.
it the very, very best, because these clients are super important to us and they need to feel that. And then getting from the client what they need to talk to me about. But as you've mentioned, most of the phone calls, they don't actually need me to begin
No.
with. People may think they do, but it's okay, Brian. I need to talk to Brian. Okay, just so Brian knows what you want to talk about. I'd love to know that in advance so I can pass it on to him. Well, I need to change my address and my beneficiary and withdraw $5,000. Well, great. Actually, Jesse and the team is the person who handles all of that anyway. So this will happen
Yeah.
much faster if we just transfer you to Jesse and she can get that done for you right now. Is that okay? And who says no to that?
I love those
It's brilliant.
terminology, right?
It's
That
brilliant.
is that okay? And Jesse can do
Hmm.
that faster for you
Hmm.
than
Yeah.
Brian can, right? And so it's not sometimes on the surface, Mike, it seems like, oh, I'm just trying to get this off my plate. I just don't want to do the work. But it really is, Brian, in your expression. I want the clients to have a better experience, and they're gonna have a better experience if they talk to the right person, not get run straight through to me.
I'd also say the mindset of whenever you're making a change in the practice and when you introduce it to clients, always framing it from
Yes.
a perspective of how is this better for them?
Amen.
When they call and ask to withdraw $5,000 or change their beneficiary, I'm not the person who handles that anyway. And for some of these things, like in the system, I don't even know how to do it anymore because Jessie is the person who does that,
I love it.
right? And she does it really, really well, much better than me. And so it's about like introducing these changes and why is it better for the client? And then when people see that, like, okay, great, Brian's thinking about us and why he's making this change. He's always trying to make the experience better.
And if you can't see the smile on Brian's face when he's talking about this, right? But you can hear that conviction in his
Yes.
voice. And that's so important when we're transferring authority from us to our
Mm.
team members,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, yeah, we'll call 1-800 service center to get this done. I don't have a lot of confidence in that, right? Versus saying, hey, great news, Jesse's going to take care of this. She's been doing this for 8 years. She rocks at her job. She handles all of our client distributions. We're going to make sure you're taken care of. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, wow, Jesse's the person I need to talk to about
Yes.
this issue because we've transferred that credibility.
Yeah. And it's great. It's important too, I would say, to give team buy-in on this a little bit. So they come back
Yes.
to me and say, Brian, this isn't really working that well. These are the suggestions I have and how we can do it better. Great. Okay, let's talk about that.
Mhm.
And a lot of times those are really good ideas and we go with that.
I love that. So, Brian, we talked about just now, Micah, you highlighted this as well. We only make changes in our practice that benefit our clients, right? Everything we're doing, we're first and foremost solving to deliver massive value. So you've conquered that, right? You're delivering massive value. They're getting better service. They're getting more responsive service. What did that then mean for you, Brian, as just as a person, as a practice owner, as an advisor? What happened to that time, that distractions?
It's all about what are the things, what's my unique ability,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
There's books that say that, I forget which ones off the top of my head. But like my time is best spent meeting with clients, working on planning, strategy, and implementation, right?
Mhm.
Digging deeper into plans, client meetings, then also allowing a better balance in my personal life. I just got married in
Yeah.
January.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Talking about having kids.
It's great.
I don't want to be the person who comes home at 9 o'clock, 4 nights of the week,
Yeah.
and I'm gone before someone wakes up, and get home after they go to bed. Like, how can I deliver a fantastic experience for clients, but also have a, a work life balance that doesn't make my wife want to kill me?
These are
Love it.
huge things, right? To really think about that and being proactive with in doing so. You've lost no clients by transferring this over, by the way, by you not answering the
No.
phones. Okay, just to be clear,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good
On this
point.
for the head trash, you lost no clients. Clients are happy. There's also no client complaints. You're not currently in litigation because you transferred your phone product.
No.
Okay, just dealing with
No.
some head trash
Compliance
here.
didn't have a
Yeah.
fit. Yeah.
Compliance didn't have a fit. No, this is a great thing that's going to be in value.
And it's all about hearing from other people who have done it to me. Like people who
Mhm.
have done it and say, I did it, this is how it went for me, and this is how easy it was. Or this is even if I had a speed bump that I hit, this is
Yeah.
how I overcame it, or this is what you should look out for when you did it. But with something as simple as that, there was none. It was all, between the ears
Mhm. Totally.
with what I thought was going to happen. That, like the Tim Ferriss fear setting. What is the
Yes.
worst thing that could happen? What am I afraid of? Everyone's going to like leave the practice because someone else is picking up the phone. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. It was an easy, seamless transition.
I love having these discussions, Brian, because even as we're walking through this, and I haven't answered my phone for years, but when you mentioned about how you didn't want your office manager interrupted, it had me thinking, all right, where am I letting my team be interrupted?
Mhm.
Do we need to kind of push that down a level? So I love this. And you mentioned speed bumps. We're going to run into speed bumps. In fact, yesterday, Mike, as you know, I got a call from one of our mastermind friends. He had hit a speed bump in his practice, not necessarily related to this, But having a network of advisors where you say, I know that you're equally committed to delivering massive value. We have the same growth goals, the same lifestyle goals. If I have a speed up, I know who I can reach out to. And
Yeah,
glad to have you as part of that community.
Talking about it, this is the lonely industry, right?
Yes.
And when you're in
definitely.
your office, you are at the top of the pyramid. You're supposed to have the answers. You're supposed to solve the problems. You're supposed to be there, right? There's a certain amount of stress that's going to be not bad stress, but there's
Oh,
stress
Yeah.
that comes with that. And we need to have a community that's out there because I guess what I don't know about you guys, solving other people's problems is super easy.
yeah.
My problems is like the end of the world, right?
Yeah,
Until I
exactly.
articulate them to somebody else, and then Jarvis is like, "What are you talking about? This is super easy." I'm like, "Oh, well, yeah. I guess it's really not that big of a deal." So having that community is so important.
Yep. And I think it's the expansion of like the podcast and in general as a
Mhm.
medium
Yes.
to have those like formal conversation that happened in the hallway at a broker dealer conference and now have those in a formal setting that can be accessed when you're folding your laundry. It can be a fleshed out conversation that's 45 minutes on one particular topic was life changing for me.
Mhm. Now, Brian, so answering the phones, by the way, just real quick, that's on the surface, that can seem like a little thing, like what a nuanced thing. That's not going to make a difference. It has made a big difference. What are a couple of others? You mentioned that you started doing surge meetings, that you've been graduating clients that aren't a good fit. Of course,
Yep.
you're a prospecting machine. You're doing live events or virtual live events all the time.
Yep.
Tell us about a couple other things that have made a real difference these last 2 years.
Using a calendar tool. I
Yes.
used to do everything via email or on the
Yep.
Oh
phone.
yeah.
Hey, let me send you these few dates that work. Actually, those don't work for me. Okay, send me some dates that do, and back and forth and back and forth. Who wants that, right? It's like I use Schedule Once, where
Oh,
you know
sure.
it shows my availability. People pick it, or some people who don't like to use email. My assistant will call the client and say she'll pull it up and book it
Yep.
as them, sees the availability, auto generates the Zoom links, auto does the reminders, lowers cancellations, everything about that. And that's a $20 a month service, like
Yeah.
hugely efficient in doing things better than what we were
Mhm.
doing before. And it's automated.
So, Brian, question on that one. So, we hear from a lot of advisors that now we've done the same thing, right? We do
Yes.
the Calendly, same difference that's there. But we hear a lot of advisors when we tell them about it, it says, oh, well, I deliver a high value of service to my clients. And if
Yeah.
I automate this, this isn't delivering a high level of service
Yeah.
to my clients.
So we're not the only people who use a calendar link, right?
That whole system's for the seven of us.
When you
Yeah.
book a flight, right? You pick the time you want to fly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Even the Ritz Carlton, right? They're going to say, "Hey, here's our room
It's our
reservation."
hotel.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
I have my handful of clients that don't like email, they
Of
don't
course,
like
perfect.
the computer. That's fine. They can call them. The assistant pulls up the calendar link and books it as them, types in their
I
name,
love it.
types in their email. They get the reminders. Even if they don't use them, we still do it through that system. And does these different processes, we used to make all the calls. We used to auto generate the Zoom link. During COVID, I was getting emails 5 minutes before a meeting saying, hey, Brian, where's the Zoom link? Oh, shoot. But
Yes,
now,
Yeah.
as soon as they book it, confirmation email goes out,
love
Zoom
it.
links embedded, and
Yep.
it's in all of the reminders. You can build custom templates, custom reminder schedules. It cuts down on cancellations. Clients like that, it's better for us. And I also love, like, even on a booking page, something as simple as I'm always trying to get people to tell me, I have an agenda.
Mm.
Is there anything that you want to add to it? So people can actually book a meeting without saying, Brian has an agenda for the meeting. Is there anything you'd like to add to it? And they need to say yes or no.
Love
And if they
that.
have no, they have to select no. But if they say yes, it's please type that in here.
Mhm.
So a lot of times they do. I want to talk about college planning, retirement income, and long-term care. Great. I will have all of that prepared for you when we get to the meeting. So it doesn't involve a second meeting, wasting their time and mine.
And that doesn't deliver massive value, right? If you
No.
come to the meeting not prepared to answer their questions because you didn't know about the question, to be
Right.
fair, because you didn't ask, you are not delivering massive value to that client.
Yeah.
So that simple thing about asking in advance what their questions are, you are prepared for the meeting, it's massive value. And they feel like
100%.
they're heard, right? The clients
Yeah.
feel like he
Yeah.
actually cares about what I want to talk about in this
Mhm.
meeting.
Like I think the clients know I would do anything I could to help them, but if I don't know what it is they need help with, it's hard to deliver on that.
Yeah.
So if I can know ahead of
Mhm.
time what they want to have, what they want to talk about, what they have questions on, I'll be prepared to deliver on that as best I can.
I want to pull out another thing that you said inside
Mm.
of this, which I think another advisors make mistakes and consistently, and it's something that we work on with our team, is always follow the process, right?
Yes.
So here's
Yeah.
an easy thing right here. You have a schedule once calendar link, perfect, it goes out. But you made a great point that if a client wants a phone call, your team member uses the schedule once link. Your team member is not logging into your red tail calendar, whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
and doing an entire different
Yeah.
process, which breaks everything. It's perfect. They're going to use the same link the client would have gotten and go through that process. You have to follow it the same. So even with quote an exception, right? Because you're going to call a client, you're still going to follow that same process, dare I say, of success to make sure it works.
Process is something that is incredibly important. It's always changing, and I know if my team is listening to this, they're thinking, "Well, Brian, it's great that you love talking about process. Because we'd love for you to follow it more." Right? And so I'm guilty of it
Yes,
the most,
fair enough.
but just having it and working towards using it 100% of the time, like you're advancing in the right direction. I'm guilty of not doing it 100%, but it's huge. We have it there. Everybody needs to follow it, and it's when you have that consistency, it's better for everybody. So much less back and forth, less confusion or mess ups potentially with clients. It's a huge win.
I love it. Now, Brian, so you've changed your call system. In fact, you even have a list for us of 10 different things you've done in the last few months.
Yeah.
You've doubled your practice. You've done all these things. But so surely this is a result of working twice as many hours.
No,
No.
no, it's not.
So
right?
tell us a little about that because your schedule has changed along with this.
Yeah. So like implementing the surge meeting schedule.
Yeah.
In my brain, I used to do that where I tried to block my meetings where I could provide the most value and do it in the time of the year where I don't mind working until 8 or 9 o'clock in
Sure.
the winter and then in the fall. But I had no system or process around that, right? So now, honestly, I took like Ben Brandt's masterclass
Yes,
on
that's
surge
great.
meetings. Like you guys have talked about it a lot. I've listened to those podcasts a couple times through, and same thing. Like this is new and different. I don't need to reinvent this. Let's just start from here.
Let's
Like
see
start
what
with what
works. Yeah.
these guys do. I'm gonna do this in this order, and then like I just went through my first surge cycle during this previous just 2 months ago,
Yeah.
and we made notes along the way of
Of
things I
course.
want to do, and I'm already going to be able to do it so much better
Perfect.
come fall. And it's about that same word that you hear all the time, being intentional.
Mhm.
Right? I can do 7 meetings a day, 4 days a week. I have it spaced out. I do 8, 9:30. It's hour meetings
Yep.
with half hour in between.
Yep.
Everything about it's better. The prep for the meeting is better. It's more consistent. The meeting itself is better because you get an assembly line mode. It's
Yep.
a lot of the meetings are relatively similar in the
Yes.
topics that you're talking about, and you just get in that mode and you're just crushing those meetings. And then the follow through is so much better. I
So great.
immediately go back to my desk. I know you guys use dictation. I type in the notes. The action items go right to the team. Those follow ups are done. The expectations are set with clients about when those follow throughs are going to be acted on. And it's just the, the meeting's better for the client. It's better for the team because everybody's in that assembling line mode. And then we
Yeah.
have big blocks of time after that in which we don't have a lot of client meetings and we can focus on other things that we want to do for the practice or for clients.
I love it. I love it. Brian, this podcast, as you know, is all about taking action. So, what are some action items what are some action items you would have given yourself 2 years ago? Like, if you could go back, what were some action items? Or for an advisor that says, boy, where Brian was, that's where I'm at, and I want to get to where Brian is. What are a couple of things that come to mind there?
Finding someone who has what you want.
Yeah.
Right. Like you don't need to reinvent the wheel in this business. Chances are, if you have a vision of what you want, someone's already done it.
Yeah.
So you can break your back thinking about all of the different things that you could do to get to this particular direction instead of just finding the person who's already there and finding out how they did it and then just do that. I don't have original ideas about practice management
Yeah.
or prospecting. There's no silver bullets here. It's
Mhm.
just a lot of times it's just copying and implementing.
I would say related to action item number 2 would be, and Brian, you mentioned this related to Surge, which would be implement that system that's proven and then adjust it. We spend so much time, Mike, you mentioned this earlier. Oh, I heard about Surge. Let me spend a bunch of time fine tuning it. But until you've done it, you don't know how to fine tune it. And what ultimately ends up happening is paralysis by analysis, right? You actually never end up implementing Surge. You're still answering your phone. Yeah. Find someone who's done it, copy what they're doing, then tweak it.
The third thing I think I want to pull out of something else that you said, Brian,
Yeah.
which is great. You had made this passing comment that you went back and re-listened to podcasts and classes on there, right?
Yeah.
And this is such a key thing. Just because you listen to one podcast, you watch one video, you don't have it. There's in a new process, there's so many things that are out there. And these are so powerful to go rewatch the webinars, go redo the podcast, create your process, think what it is, then go back and re-listen to it again, right? Because this is what experts do. This is what professionals that are at the top of their game, this is what they do consistently, right? Athletes rewatch their game videos. They rewatch the
100%.
footage that's there.
Yeah.
They go through this again. How can I make these improvements? What did I miss?
The example I have is delegating or having someone help me manage my email inbox.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, I get inundated with
Yeah.
100+ emails every day, most
Sure.
of which are garbage.
Yes.
A lot of which I don't need to be the person to handle because, again, if it's someone wants to change a beneficiary or withdraw
Yeah.
$5,000, I'm not the person to best handle that. And so I had no idea how to set up like a foldering system, or some people do like color coding.
Yeah.
You guys posted a webinar where your team members, Colleen and Victoria, they're talking and chatting. I listened to that 4 or 5 times
Yeah.
about this is exactly how we do it. And then I had my team listen to, we watched that same
Perfect.
webinar about this is how these team members do it. Let's just start with doing it that way. And I implemented it. It was almost seamless. I didn't have any hiccups. It was unbelievable. And just that alone is so much better.
I love it. I love it. Mike, any other parting thoughts for us based on this interview? And Brian, thank you again so much for coming and
Yeah.
chatting with us. We'll forgive you for the 2 alerts that popped up on your
Yeah,
laptop.
we're going to talk about that later.
That's going to be the next.
Some extreme
That'll be
accountability.
the next episode. Brian, it's been great spending time with you these last
Absolutely.
2 days at our Invictus Mastermind. I'm sure we'll see you at future masterminds.
Would love to be there. Yeah, prospecting, practice building, all of it. It's a lot of people are doing some really great things. It's just a matter of kind of getting yourself into a community with people who think like you, whichever way that is, and kind of brainstorming about how everyone can level up.
Well, just remember that in this industry, you are not alone. We're all about leveling up. We're all about increasing. And the best way to do that is to give us 5 stars. Give us that 5-star rating. Join the perfect RA, at least in the community, because you're going to have other great advisors like Brian. We got a couple 100 great advisors. We're all trying to that level up. Until next time. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Micah, before you end this, Ryan, before everybody hangs up, go to theperfectra.com. We are doing a panel of success conference in connection with XYPN Live on October 8th. So you can visit theperfectra.com to get signed up for that panel of success, to learn in person from Micah and I, Ben Brandt, Stephen Jarvis, and a handful of other just rock star advisors like Brian.
Until next time, happy planning.
Thanks,
Happy
guys.
planning. Thanks, Brian.